small business growth strategies. Really, when we're looking at small business growth strategies, this is something that I think that we all have to remember, is that if you're not growing, you're falling behind the competition. So that's something that's really key to remember, and that's why understanding what growth strategies are out there and understanding your own business strategy and aligning that is so critical for your own business's success. And so what will we cover? We're going to talk about the top 10 small business growth strategies out there. We'll overview each of them. We'll have examples for each of them to demonstrate how they actually work. And then, of course, part of that will be pulling out some of the keys to success for each of these growth strategies. So this is one of the oddest slides I think that anyone has ever shown. It's a little overkill. But really what it does is it breaks down all the growth strategies out there. And you don't have to actually start jotting everything down. Don't worry about that. What we're going to do is we'll actually post this on the blog as well, so you'll have this image available so you don't have to go nuts scribbling everything down. But really what we've seen is that they go into two major brackets, and many other academics out there, they would agree with the same type of lines here. So it's either organic or inorganic. And then under each of these, there's many different opportunities. So today's webinar is going to be mostly about organic growth, but let's talk a little bit about inorganic growth before we jump in. So there's two major pieces here. There's joint ventures and there's mergers and acquisitions. So it's important to understand that organic versus inorganic. Organic is when you're growing within the own framework of your business, versus inorganic is when you're actually going externally. So you're working with other companies. It's not just about you anymore, or you're buying other companies. And I've seen both strategies work. Joint ventures, very common if you're going into other countries. So a big challenge of going into another country is obviously understanding the culture. Maybe there's governmental regulations preventing you from actually entering that marketplace. So sometimes you actually have to have a joint venture with a company or a business that's already established in that country. And that's very common, especially in third world developing countries, but it's common actually even in modern countries for them to want to have control over business, because really that's important for governments, because that's where they get a majority of their income. So that's one thing, is joint ventures, is building a partnership with someone else. But there's other great reasons to do it. And the example that I'm going to give for the joint ventures is basically a real estate investment trust. So basically there's companies out there that they invest in real estate. They make money basically by doing that. And a REIT that was actually just developed in Toronto a few years ago ended up starting by using a joint venture, because in a REIT, you have to buy a property, but you also have to raise money to do that. So to do both things at the same time can be quite difficult. But that's where a joint venture actually becomes a genius idea, is that a startup REIT actually partnered with a financial private investment company, and they formed this joint venture where basically it was the job for the investment company to get the money, and then it was the job of the REIT to buy the real estate and make sure that they hit certain return levels. And by doing that, instead of it taking maybe 5 years to hit certain thresholds for them, it actually took 1 year. And so joint ventures, if you don't have the skill sets internally, this is an inorganic growth model that actually can help skyrocket your business. So if something doesn't make sense to be doing yourself, could you have a joint venture with someone else? Another one, of course, is mergers and acquisitions. And this is something that we see quite a bit within social media. And the reason being is it takes a long time to develop something yourself. I mean, when we look at companies like Google, they do develop everything themselves, but you see things like they have their beta environment, and then maybe 2 years later, it finally isn't beta anymore. I mean, Gmail was beta for a very, very long time. And so if you want to actually bypass that entire learning curve, a merger or an acquisition is a great way to do it. And this is something that we're seeing definitely, like I said, in social media because companies, they don't want to be spending the time. Yahoo just bought a major organization just to get into social media so that they could bypass doing it themselves. So Now that we know what inorganic and organic is, and we covered inorganic really quickly, these are actually the other top 10 that we're going to be covering. So we're not going to talk any more about inorganic. We're going to jump right into organic. And the first one is increase the average sale. The next one we're going to talk about within existing customers is increase the frequency of someone buying from you. Offering a new product or service would be another way to actually get more from your existing customers. And then, of course, retention rates. So these are 4 strategies that can be used for your existing customers. But sometimes existing customers is not enough for a company and they want to grow more. So how can you do that? New customers. And for new customers, maybe it's just new target markets that you're going after with your existing product or service. And then we have a new offering. So this is when you actually come up with a new product and or service for a new customer. Growth strategy number 7, we have channel partners. So this is actually when we're reaching out and finding someone else who can get our product or service to other customers. And then there's vertical and horizontal integration. So that's going beyond where we are today. Don't worry, we're going to jump into each of these in more detail, but these are the high level of what we're going to be covering. So vertical integration and horizontal and how to do that. Modernization, we basically lump that into one big one. It's cost savings. So you actually grow by increasing your margin by improving your process, technology, or economies of scale. And the last one is online. Obviously, that's one of the new channels out there, not really new anymore, but it's something that does that make sense for your business? How can you do that? Does it make sense for anyone not to go online would probably be the question. But these are the 10 growth strategies that we're going to be covering. So let's jump right into it. So for existing customers, what we're looking at doing is increasing the average sale of a customer. And the way that you can do that is actually adding more value to your customer through your product or service. And when you're adding more value to them, they're more willing to pay more, and that's how you can actually increase the average sale because your total revenue increases. So that helps you increase your price. Alternatively, another way to do this is actually encouraging your customers to buy more at the same time. So let's look at some examples here. So one example would be Magic Cuts. Magic Cuts, even 6-7 years ago, was actually extremely inexpensive. The average haircut would have been $8–12. Now what Magic Cuts did is they started to actually charge for incremental value or services. So you had to also pay for shampoo. Then you also had to pay for styling. And then they started adding additional products that they would upsell their customers for. So when you go to Magic Cuts, it's no longer a $12 haircut. By adding all this additional value and encouraging customers to buy more things at the same time, they were actually able to make their average sale from about 12 to over 30. And that makes a huge difference in the growth of their profit. Next is going to be a wedding photographer. So a wedding photographer was actually only charging about $800 per wedding. And what they really wanted to do was move this up to about $2,000. So how do you do this? What they ended up realizing is that you had to add more value to increase the price. So instead of having just one photographer, they ended up having 2 photographers minimum at every single wedding. Then they ended up having these extra photo areas where people could put on props like a cowboy hat and things like that and make it really fun for all the guests. That was another value add. And then they came up with also including the engagement photography. So that was another component of it, all to increase the value to the clients and then be able to increase the price. The last great example here is more in line with buying more at once. And this really is a grocery store. How often have you gone to a grocery store and it says 3 for $5 or it's $2 each? So things like that, that encourages the consumer to buy more at one time. So increasing the average sale price, that is tactic number 1 to help your business grow. Tactic number 2, increase the frequency of customers coming back to you. So you want them to just come back more often. How do you do this? Gillette is actually the quintessential example of buying more times. In fact, with their razors, they scientifically ensure that the average razor can only be used 5 times. And what's interesting is that if a razor actually lasts 7 times, or if it lasts 3 times, that makes a dramatic impact onto their revenue. So it's very important for them to be able to be very specific in how frequently a customer has to come by and buy more razors. The next example is Coca-Cola sizes, so buying more times. The fact that if you buy a case of 24 at once, then you're not going to be buying that much, so that you actually get a volume discount. Whereas having some of the different packages, different sizes, different cans or bottles, and having them available all over the place in their distribution channels, that increases the frequency of how often you see Coca-Cola and therefore how often you buy Coca-Cola. The next one here is reward coupons. I don't know how many times that you've actually seen maybe a clothing store that when you buy X amount, they actually give you a $20 voucher that's good and redeemable within a week. And so it actually encourages you to come back again to continue to actually spend that $20 and take advantage of it. So tactics like that increase the frequency of your customers buying. New offering, existing customers. So for your existing customers, are there additional products or services that you could actually add on? We already talked about what Magic Hats did, and then they actually had the products as well available. But you could actually do this for almost any business. So another example would be probably the playbook for RIM. I mean, there would be many arguments that it hasn't been that successful, but the whole idea is that they already had tied up the business marketplace. I mean, maybe, again, that's debatable that they still own that. But when they came out with the tablet, it was very easy for them to then go back to their existing clientele, their existing marketplace, and say, hey, listen, you already have a BlackBerry. The playbook actually is way more advantageous than an iPad when you already have a BlackBerry. And here's all the functionality and how they work together. So they actually created another product that worked well and actually better for their existing customers than for a new customer. For a new customer, they were almost more than likely to select another tablet. But for RIM's existing customers, the playbook still made sense. Another example would be IBM. So as opposed to a product, what IBM really did is they revolutionized who they were throughout the 90s and 2000s. Back in the 80s, they were known as purely a hardware company. So they were known for their PCs, for their computers, and that's what they did. But that's no longer how we recognize them. And it started very incrementally, that IBM would actually start adding services to their existing clients. So not only did you actually get the hardware, but now you would have a service contract for it. The next step, not only did you have a service contract for your IT, but it also made sense to have technology consulting. And this side of the business for IBM was so successful that they ended up actually changing their entire focus as a business. They're no longer known as a hardware company at all. In fact, they sold off the ThinkPad, which was one of their best hardware solutions out there, to Lenovo. So this was really interesting, the fact that these new products or services to their existing customers allowed them to actually revolutionize their business, and now that's where they actually make their revenue. And the last piece here would be intellectual property. So maybe for your existing customers, they're already using your consulting or your product, and maybe this is something that might be online, or actually Small Business Solver is a really, really good example of this, is once you have your base product, is there a chance to white label it or add consulting or other components into that for your existing customers. Growth strategy number 4, retention. So even the best financial advisor in the world always expects to lose 10% of their customers every single year. So they have a 90% retention, which is fabulous. But let's be honest, in the financial industry, you'd expect that once someone has that rapport and trust, they wouldn't leave. And even the financial industry expects a 10% loss of their customers. So if we focus on retention ourselves as businesses, this is actually a major growth strategy, because not only do you have repeat business, you start to build brand loyalty and referrals. So let's go through the examples here. So tied to brand Target, or Target as Canadians and many Americans also call them, there was a lot of excitement about Target coming to Canada. And really the reason why this was so is that they had a fabulous brand. And every single time anyone went to a Target store, there was always great products and great customer service. And so people would continue, whenever we crossed the border as Canadians to go shopping, going to Targets. That was part of the stop. Now that they're here, because of that reputation, they're going to be retaining customers and consumers in Canada. Another great example is Aeroplan. Aeroplan is the loyalty program that's tied to Air Canada, and I can't tell you how many businesses and how many business people would actually have to go with Air Canada because they have the Aeroplan points program, and because it starts allowing for prioritization and upgrades and things like that, that starts to really create repeat business. And if there's a choice, people who have Aeroplan are more than likely to go with Air Canada. And the final example that we all know, of course, is Tim Hortons. So Tim Hortons in Canada, again, is the number one coffee that we have, and of course is expanding now. There's over 4,300 store locations now across North America. And just the brand loyalty that's come from that, and many of their ads actually talk about how loyal their customer base is. And that type of retention and having that ongoing relationship with their consumers is so important. So retention and finding ways to do that, probably the number one way, not only the brand image, but it's going to be follow-up and staying in front of your customers. Growth strategy number 5. This is going beyond our existing customers. We're now focused on new customers. And really the new customers, this is a new niche, new target. This one is really interesting because we already have the product or service in place, and now we're just realizing how another niche market or target can actually utilize or leverage what we've already created. So there is almost no incremental investment for us. It's just potentially only tweaking it a bit, if at all, and then going after a new target. So Apple, are they going to branch into the business market more? Probably, if they're not already doing that. And then another good example here is Small Business Solver again. At first, we only actually started targeting governments and municipalities. And now we work with coaches and libraries and universities. And so this was, even though we had the same product, it was just a little bit of tweaking to then go after different target markets with what we already had. This way is one of the least risky ways to grow. The riskiest way to grow, and unfortunately as small business owners, we've all gone through this type at least once, is the new offering, so your product or service, to a new customer. So this is when you start up. That's probably the best example, and that's why it's so tough. I mean, a brand new product to a brand new customer has a huge mountain or a huge hill that we have to get up on. And this is probably the most challenging, most difficult to do. It is a lot easier to do any of the other growth strategies that we've already spoken about. But at the same time, as startups, if that's the stage that we're in, that's what we have to do. But another example would be, let's say a law firm. Maybe they are already practicing business law, but they wanted to get into family law or another area of law that was unrelated. There might be some overlap, but mostly they'd be going after a brand new customer with a brand new offering. It takes a long time to actually build up your network in that, get your brand awareness out there, and establish credibility. And that's why it's so challenging. Growth strategy number 7, channel partners. This is actually one of my favorite ones out there. This is actually the model that Small Business Solver uses, and I recommend to most entrepreneurs that I speak to see whether or not this is an opportunity. The reason I think channel partners are so great is that it's just an opportunity for you to expand your sales force at little or no cost. And it's really exciting when you are able to find someone that works well with you. And here's some examples, is that you could have resellers. You could simply have an affiliate, so that's someone who actually gets a referral fee from you. Or franchisees is not necessarily termed a channel partner, but it has the same effect, which is why we lumped it in here. So here's some examples. SAP, very, very successful, probably the largest ERP. It is the largest ERP system out there. And they have been selling now for decades, and they're very well known and respected. So how do they do it? They actually focus on the intellectual property of the programming and the software itself. And then they partner with resellers, people throughout the world who get trained as certified resellers of this ERP. So it's an enterprise resource planning tool. It's basically to help your entire organization run more fluidly. And they would train someone on how to implement and consult and resell this, and then these resellers make a margin on it. So they might make 30% or whatever it is of the entire package. And typically SAP sells for about $1 million. So at that amount, these resellers are making a hefty commission on this. They are doing lots of work, and they have to be certified, which helps SAP control their own service offering. However, it's really lucrative for both sides. Both sides benefit from having each other, and it's a very good relationship. Another good example would be Constant Contact, and really they focus on the affiliate side. So they have a huge affiliate program, thousands of affiliates who actually resell their email drip marketing and event platform. Small Business Solver, we actually use Constant Contact ourselves. And what's really neat about them is that they give a percentage of any sales or referrals that come into Constant Contact. But they actively have email campaigns going out to their affiliates to educate them. They offer webinars to educate them. They have all of these great marketing templates to help support them pushing the Constant Contact product. So when you have a channel partner, part of it is making sure that you have a great communication plan and you stay in front of your channel partners so that they don't forget about you. And in both the SAP and the Constant Contact examples, they both had a training program. They definitely both stay in touch, not only by email, but Constant Contact calls regularly all of their affiliate partners, which is rather unexpected but effective. And then franchisees. There's lots of franchises out there, Subway, McDonald's, Harvey's, things that we would Tim Hortons, of course, that we think about. But I wanted to actually show one that is a little bit different, Leon's. Leon's is a large furniture company. And what's neat about them is that they have a majority of their stores are owned by the company. But in some areas where it seemed that it would actually be a better fit because it was a rural location or maybe further up north or some other reason, it made sense for Leon's actually not to own the store but to actually have a local owner. They franchise. So it's almost in the areas where it made sense to have someone local, that's when they made that available. So for channel partners, there's lots of options out here. These are 3 of them, but something to consider. Growth strategy number 8, vertical and horizontal integration. So basically this means that in the supply chain, and your supply chain would be, let's say you start at raw materials, it goes to the factory, you manufacture a product, then it goes to the wholesale warehouse, so maybe that's closer, and then it goes to the retail store, and then it gets sold. So that's really what a supply chain would look like. Let's say you are the person who's the wholesale company, so you have a warehouse that you're then selling products to individual stores. So let's say convenience stores. If you wanted to go forward, then maybe the wholesaler would start opening up a chain of convenience stores. If you wanted to go backwards in your vertical integration, you have your warehouse, but maybe you want to start manufacturing some of your products. So vertical integration is when you go forwards or backwards in the supply chain. I'll give some more examples and then explain horizontal. So Li & Fung is actually a very well-known and respected third-party logistics company, or that's how they started, based out of Hong Kong. And their entire business was actually to help North American companies buy products from mainland China. And it would actually go through Hong Kong, and then Li & Fung would actually organize everything, do a quality inspection, make sure that it arrived on time, organize the transportation, all that good stuff. So Li & Fung, not only did they start understanding this entire process so well, they decided to grow vertically, and they went backwards. And so what they did is they actually started buying some of the companies that they were buying from. So one of their customers, Toys R Us, and so they were out of Hong Kong, and they started buying toy manufacturing companies in China. So that was actually growing their business by doing backward vertical integration. C.H. Robinson is a very large transportation company throughout the world. I think it's number 3 actually in the world. And what they also did was very similar. They run the, for Loblaws, they actually run the produce side of things. So with that in mind, what C.H. Robinson started to do is to make sure that the fruit was as fresh and high quality as possible. They started not only educating the farmers in Florida, but they started buying farms in Florida. So again, this is another example of backwards of vertical integration. An example of forwards would be Coca-Cola stores. So Coca-Cola, as we know, is a large manufacturing of soft drinks. And their dream, although they go through many of the convenience stores and other outlets, what they decided to do was actually go forwards. And in some malls throughout North America, or sometimes you'll see at festivals, they'll have a huge booth. And that's them moving forward to the front consumer level within the supply chain. And they not only now have the manufacturing, but they want to make sure that they also have some customer contact. Then horizontal. So horizontal integration would be not when you're going up and down the same supply chain. So we gave examples of toys as one supply chain or produce as another supply chain. This is when you actually decide to go to another product or service. So it's another one. But the key here is that it should be similar. So we'd say it's adjacent or close or related. And so for this one, a great example would be Loblaws. Loblaws started with just having their own, well, they have no frills and they had all that good kind of stuff. And then they started getting into clothing as well and opened up Joe Fresh stores. And then they kept on opening up other types of related products to that, including even dinnerware. So this is what would be termed horizontal. They start branching out from what they're existing and what they're doing. Number 9, modernization. So this one, again, is more focused on actually cost reduction and in improving your margin as a way to actually grow your business. And there's 3 main ways to consider doing this. Number 1, improve your process. The example for this is McDonald's. McDonald's has a very seamless process that from the time that you order, you should actually be able to receive your order in less than 60 seconds. Last time you go to Tim Hortons, you can actually see that from the time in drive-through someone orders, is then time until that person gets their order. So making sure that you process things so that you increase your capacity or do it more efficiently, that's one way for modernization. Next one, obviously technology, something that you use technology to make your business work better. Law firm, very large law firm, downtown Toronto, they actually instituted a new software on their BlackBerry smartphones to actually make sure that even when they were on their phone, they were still actually tracking the time that they were spending with their clients. So they actually used technology to actually increase their profit. So every single time they used their BlackBerry for a client, that time was logged, and then the client was then billed because of technology. Interesting. And the last one is economies of scale. So basically, the bigger you are, the lower the price will be because you're buying so much. And we know that even going to a grocery store, again, if you buy 3 things, you get it for $5. If you bought 1, it's $2 each. So the more you buy, the lower the price per item. Walmart, obviously, that's something that they're well known for, is they have their low-cost strategy, and they really use their economies as they continue to grow. But another industry that has started to really use that is healthcare. Within Canada, we now have buying groups for many of our hospitals. So instead of each hospital buying individually, hospitals started to partner up together, and they created actually a joint venture to do their procurement or their purchasing for them, and together their overall cost is now lower on a per unit basis. And finally, online. So there's lots of different ways to grow your business online. You can sell products there. You can have your affiliates, so that's the referral fees there. There's advertising. And then probably one of the most recognized and best forums in terms of what financial analysts would say is some sort of money based on the amount of traffic that's coming to your site. So for products, the best example, eBay and Amazon. For affiliates, and that would probably, well, Microsoft has resellers, but affiliates, again, Constant Contact is with that. Advertising, Facebook, very well known for that's how they started generating money finally. Previous to that, they didn't know how to do it. Advertising was the way that made sense for them. And then the percentage of traffic, well, the quintessential example in this one would be PayPal. Every single time a transaction goes through PayPal, they make a percentage. Doing things like that, that is well known within the financial industry to be the most successful model online. I don't want to touch too much more on online because next week our e-commerce 101 is going to be talking about everything about this in detail. So just as a reminder, we did talk about all of these growth strategies today, so organic versus inorganic ones. Went through joint ventures, mergers and acquisitions, and then for within your own company, 4 major ways to do it: modernization, new channels, new customers, or just get more from what you already have with your existing customers. So just a reminder, we did go through the growth strategies, had examples, and some of the examples would have led to keys to success. And thank you very much. I am now ready to answer any questions that you might have.